7th, 2023 meeting. I'm Chair of the Education Commission. I'd like to note that we are starting the meeting at 7:02 p.m. Thank you all for your attendance. We are live streaming the meeting on NBTC YouTube channel. Our board of administrators and all we have a forum, and we do have two commissioners who have requested Dave Snyder is participating remotely as he has a work commitment out of the country. And Kenneth Aguirre is participating virtually as he is out of state for a family matter. I think I have a motion to approve Dave Snyder and Kenneth Aguirre's request to participate remotely. Could I have a second?
Yes.
Second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passed. Welcome. See you. So happy December and happy first night of Hanukkah celebrating. My daughter just had a great first night, I heard. You do have some chocolate here to celebrate. And we do have all kinds of treats, but we will get out of here. The agenda is hopefully shorter than recent ones. We do have key actions accepting NBTC annual financial audit, our WAA Report, and the accompanying resolution, our legislative agenda, VRE actions, as well as a closed session at the end of the meeting. We will also be honoring 3 NBTC commissioners for their service as they step away from the commission. So our first item is a call for nominations for proposed commission appointments. No, for 2024. As 2023 comes to a close, it's time to be thinking about next year's NBTC leadership team. As a reminder, each January, this body approves the slate of officers, committee memberships, and board appointments. We plan to do so again next month. So over the holidays, please let Kate or let me or Kate know if you wish to change your committee participation or wish to be considered for an officer or board appointment role. Proposed nominations for the 2024 slate of officers and appointments will be included in our January meeting materials, which will be distributed prior to the holidays. So actually don't wait for the holidays. Thank you, Kate. Please let us know, please. A copy of our current committee and board appointments is at your place. We will also have a public hearing in January. I want to remind the public that the January meeting is our annual public hearing focused on NBTC's work plan. We encourage all those who are interested in the work that NBTC does for the region to please provide their public comment. There will be information on novatransit.org on how to submit comments. We can come and present our items at our January 4th meeting. Our executive director, Keith Tate, will provide more details later this meeting. But before we move into the agenda, Kate, did we receive any public comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. In fact, we did receive 2 public comments. They actually came through the mail. One is a member of the public who was sharing concerns over fare evasion at WMATA, which is actually something that we have addressed in our WMATA report that will come up a little bit later. They would like NBTC to be considered conditioning our subsidy payments to WMATA focused on a reduction in fare evasion and higher penalties. The second letter that we received was from the Greater Washington Partnership, and they were sharing their support for VRE's Saturday service as proposed in their 2025 budget.
Thank you very much. And I believe we received those by mail, so there's very many ways to be able to share comments, even by snail mail. We are now on to action item number 2 to approve our November 2nd, 2023 minutes. I would have a motion to approve the minutes of November 2nd, 2023 commission meeting. So move. Do I have a second? Was that Ms. Garvey? Yes. Okay. And any further discussion? Hearing none, I will begin with a roll call vote first for participating virtually. Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Now for the rest of the commission, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And I believe only one abstention, Mr. McKay. Thank you. The motion passes. And now for a very special moment, I believe we have only one of our recognees here today. And if you look behind you on the board, or in front of you, we will be saying farewell to some departing commissioners. But one of our long time commissioners, our beloved Fairfax County Commissioner, John Faust, who is not retiring, he's just not running for reelection. He's a smart guy.
He's never retiring.
No. And so we will be approving hopefully unanimously a resolution commending the Honorable John Faust on his departure from NBTC. We'd like to recognize Commissioner and Supervisor John Faust, who's retiring or not from the Fairfax County Board, where he served for the past 16 years. We have a resolution of commendation to recognize Mr. Faust's service to MBTC and the region. I will not read the entire thing. I think I have it here, but some highlights. As many of you know, Supervisor Faust has represented Fairfax County on MBTC since 2009. He's faithfully served on the Program Advisory Committee, where he provided thoughtful insight, especially on the Vision Route 7, the RT project, and the commuter code. Throughout his tenure on MBTC, Mr. Faust has been an advocate for successful completion of both Phase 1 and Phase 2, and he's seen them of the Metro Rail Silver Line and other transit initiatives. We are so sad to see Mr. Faust officially leave MBTC, but we know he will be around, perhaps providing some public comments in future meetings or joining us for future openings, walks, and rides along Metro. But we do very much thank you for your public service. We are very honored to have you. You leave us in the Dranesville district in great shoes to fill. And definitely as a good, I was a Brownie Scout, a better place than you were. So thank you very much from all of us for your years of service. And I will turn to Chairman.
I move approval of the resolution.
Second. Any further comments or discussion? All right, all those, I'm sorry, let me begin with online. Mr. Aguirre.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit.
Is that an aye?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
A heartfelt and very strong yes.
Now for the rest of the commission here in the room, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent, the motion passes unanimously. I don't know if there are any brief comments before we head up for a photo. Any others would like to add anything? Yes.
Yeah, so I grew up in your district and I've just been impressed throughout with your rock solid commitment to public service in all the right ways, sense of economic development. And then in this commission, I feel like the consistency of great questions has just been a huge help. Not, I feel like one of three I get right. Everyone that you ask is thoughtful and really pushes the discussion. So just thanks for all your leadership.
So I think a good question. John, do you want to say any words before we take our photo?
I mean, it's a great organization. Very proud of the work you're doing and imagine any work that's more important right now. So keep it up.
And I would say it's been a pleasure sitting next to John. He shared his cookies and candy.
Well, we know you'll be missed, John. I know many more opportunities to celebrate you. And hopefully we'll see you at some of the 60th anniversary events and celebrations next year. All right, to that, I believe we have our places here. Live.
Can I just point out for those of you that
You may not know this, but at the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors meeting, we spent an hour talking about this guy.
Yes, that's right.
We've kind of all set our.
All on tape. It is.
I was just gonna add a chair's privilege that, many, I think at our meeting, her, the very first time I ever knocked on a door with a job about me. So, very honored to be here today. It's probably your fault that I'm here. Do that, we do have, two additional resolutions. Mr. Bell and Mr. Clemente cannot be with us today, but we will also be voting on their resolutions. Senator John Bell is also retiring from public service. He was appointed to NBTC in June of 2020. We are especially grateful for Senator Bell voting for the landmark transportation bill HB 1414 in the 2020 General Assembly session, which modernized transportation and transit funding. Could I please have a motion to approve a resolution commending the Honorable John Bell on his departure from NBTC? A move from Mr. DeFronti. Second from Ms. Bagley. Any further comments? All right, hearing none, we'll do a roll call first. I will begin again with Mr. Aguirre.
Aye.
Aye, Mr. Snyder.
Aye.
Excellent. Now for the rest of the commission, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Excellent, the motion passes unanimously. And finally, we'd like to recognize Nick Clemente for his service on NBTC from 2022 to October 2023 as an appointee from the House of Delegates. He can't be here tonight, but we'd like to acknowledge his service on NBTC. While on the commission, Mr. Clemente was an advocate for safe and reliable transit in Virginia and investing in the future of transit. We have prepared a resolution commending Mr. Clemente. Can I please have a motion to approve the resolution? So moves Mr. DeFranci, a second. I will second that. Any further discussion? Okay, I will turn to our online callers. Mr. Aguirre.
Aye.
Aye, Mr. Snyder.
Aye.
Aye, okay, excellent. Now for the rest of the commission in the room, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? I believe that passes with Mr. Skiles out of the group. And we will make sure that Senator Bell and Mr. Clemente get their resolutions and awards. Next month, we'll be welcoming at least one new commissioner and maybe saying farewell to a few others, depending on new appointments to NBTC. So please stay tuned. We are now on to action item area 4, not action, sorry, smart, sorry, Jen, I'm not giving you everything. As you recall, NBTC submitted a letter to the Commonwealth Transportation Board providing comments on the proposed changes, focusing on the potential impact that the smart scale changes would have to public transit project, as well as the limitations on our larger jurisdictions with the number of applications are allowed to submit. CTB met this Monday and included a series of changes to the program. The staff from the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment, OIPI, were not able to make it tonight, but we're so thankful that DPRT Director Jen Rule has offered to share with us the results of the CTB action on Monday.
Thank you, Chair Palchik. On behalf of the Secretary in the Office of Environmental Planning and Investment, I'll give you an update on what was a very lengthy debate of the Commonwealth Transportation Board on Monday. It is also recorded for anybody that would like to go back and watch rather vigorous conversation. There were 5 staff recommendations that were made to the CTB. I'll walk through each one of those and at a high level. The first one was to change the congestion factor, which is calculated now based on current traffic, to look 10 years into the future. That's what we did in the first couple of rounds of smart scale. The staff recommendation was to look 10 years in the future after a considerable amount of debate amongst the board to either retain the current traffic look or to do something in between. The board agreed to calculate a congestion factor 7 years into the future. The second recommendation from the staff was to utilize a forward-looking economic development measure that was largely based, that was developed by the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. That recommendation that was made by the staff was affirmed by the board. The third recommendation combined two pieces together as a refinement of the high priority projects program eligibility and an elimination of the step 2 element of the process. I'll start with the high priority projects definition. That staff recommendation was refined by the board to provide some additional clarity around eligibility for passenger rail stations or corridor improvements, which was a significant clarification, including new bridges on rail corridors. And around transit, added some additional clarity around what high capacity and fixed guideway transit includes. It includes projects like light rail transit, bus rapid transit, heavy rail transit, and also transit transfer stations. There were also some modifications made to, there was a kind of a general statement at the end about entire corridors that was, I will say, a little bit challenging. I spoke about that in the board meeting. I feel like we ended in a good place there to look at improvements that are recommended by studies, not only and taking that really restricted entire corridor out of the staff recommendation, but to also include studies by MPOs, transit agencies, local governments that fit the that are equivalent to a study that the state would perform to be a basis for a project to enter into the smart scale process. That was a clarification that was made and affirmed by the CTB. The board agreed to eliminate step 2 as recommended by staff. So that was consistent with the staff recommendation. I know this body, I wasn't able to be here last month. I know there was a vigorous conversation about the application limits. That staff recommendation included creating a new 3-tier application limit and reducing the number of applications that could be submitted. The board did not accept that recommendation, so there are no changes or reductions in the application limits from previous cycles of application. The final, well, no, I'm sorry. So the final item, number 5, was really looking at all of the weightings and typologies for the different factor areas that we support projects as part of Smart Scale. This was broken into, I want to say, 5 or 6 individual votes by the board. I'll start with the land use. Staff recommended converting land use the land use factor to a multiplier instead of using it as an equivalent factor like all of the other factor areas. The board rejected that staff recommendation, ultimately removing land use as a consideration in Smart Scale. I will say the legal sufficiency of that is in question. The secretary made some very widely quoted about his feelings about this regarding whether or not it's legal, but also that, you know, the land use factor, how it was applied, you know, has come out of many years of staff recommendations, technical expertise, and the recommendation that we continue to have land use as a factor in that selection process was something that was strongly felt by the technical staff, and I still lump myself in technical staff, I would say. But the board did reject the staff recommendation and eliminated land use. That then created a need to redistribute the factor weights across the other remaining 5 factor areas. I will just touch on, while they changed for all 4 typologies or different areas of the Commonwealth, Northern Virginia, Northern Typology A. So the 20% of the score that had been applied to land use was applied 10% into safety and 10% into accessibility. And that was approved. That modification was what was approved by the board. I know there have been a lot of questions about what does that, like, what does all of this mean in terms of projects that the board adopted with a scenario that has not been evaluated. So what that means and how that applies and how that impacts our projects going forward, I can't give you a clear answer on that. But these are the actions that were taken by the board. They are the policy body that sets the policy for both the RPT and VDOT in implementing the Smart Scale program, and they will be what will be utilized for round 6, which will open up next. So the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment will be posting the technical guide, which goes into a lot more detail about how the program is implemented. in a draft form, after the first of the year. And so that will give the local jurisdiction more insight on how these, different elements will be utilized going forward. I will say, on the application caps, I know there was a lot of passion around that. There's a lot of data that shows that the applications that we've received have not been ready, when we've received them. So I know from the DRPT perspective, we'll be working with applicants to make sure that we get applications that are ready to go in that pre-application phase, so that we've got good quality applications to work with and evaluate going forward. And with that, I will do my best to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jen. Really appreciate it. I know it was a long meeting, and not too far, from today. And so, my only question before I open it up is just to clarify, if I have it correct, the new numbers for our area would be safety at 15%, congestion mitigation is 45%, accessibility is 25%, and my economic development is 5%, and environmental quality 10%.
That is absolutely correct.
As you mentioned, the draft will be posted, hopefully,
The technical guide will be posted after.
and I think our staff will be evaluating how this, the next round. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Good. I'm sure there will continue to be a lot of discussion, but I think at least I know I appreciate from our perspective, they're not all the same in all of our jurisdictions, but that some of our concerns on the others were addressed. Okay, next we will move on to NBTC's FY 2023 audited financial statements and compliance report. We do have our auditors from TV Mayors here tonight to give a presentation on the audits. The auditors met with the executive committee, serving as the audit committee prior to this meeting, and gave us a detailed overview of the audit. Scott, would you like to introduce our audit?
Sure. Tonight we have Mike Barber, who's a partner at PB Mayors. Mike is actually the concurring partner on our account. At one point, he was the in-charge partner many years ago. And we definitely welcome him. Very happy to.
Thank you, Scott. And Madam Chair, members of the board, just very quickly overview of the audit. It's a clean audit. We had no findings, so we have an unmodified opinion on your financial statements. We had no findings in our internal controls, controls over federal dollars. All of those looked good. I actually think we tested 100% of the federal dollars that flowed through. And so we had no findings there. Things went really well with our audit. Scott and his team did a great job of providing us data and information as requested. Got it to us timely. As near as we can tell, everything was there that we've requested to look at. Financial statements should be put together to meet all the standards for GASB and the APA and all the different rule setting bodies that there are that want to see their items in the financials, so they should be complete. And I think you have a very strong finance team. The fact that we had no journal entries for the year-end numbers, no past adjustments, things of that nature, I think speaks to that comment as well. Before I open it up for questions, if you allow me 15 seconds, I worked with Mr. Faust on 2 different boards, this one as well as another one, and enjoyed the time audit committee that you served on the other board that we had time to talk one-on-one and to do that. Certainly appreciated all your comments, questions that you had for us. And I hope with your some of your newfound time, you get to go see your beloved Pittsburgh Steelers play the game.
I was wondering if the game is scheduled for tonight when you agreed to come.
I don't get to agree to come. I'm here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure working.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments and certainly enjoyed working with you on both these commissions. With that, I will open it up for questions for me on the audit or anything that pertains to the audit.
Mark, I have no questions. Really appreciate the audit, but we'll see if there are any others. The executive committee had a chance to have our initial review earlier today. All right, well, once again, thank you. We should be very, very proud of that NBTC, another clean audit. And I also believe you BRU as well. No, you do. And so it's so important, and I can tell that Scott has had a 22-year tenure with NBTC's financial management at the audit. I want to thank you and your team, Kalithia Quarles, Brittany Sumter, and Nolan Syed for all of your hard work and ensuring that we have excellent financial statements, clean, ready to go, in line. Thank you for your hard work dealing with very complicated allocation models. We couldn't do that without you, as well as the grant management and internal controls over finances. So thank you very much to Scott and your team for your hard work. Thank you much. All right, so with that, could I have a motion to accept and authorize distribution of NBTC FY 2023 audited financial statements and compliance reports?
So,
I have a motion from Mr. Faust, I think, second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll start with a roll call with our virtual participants. Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Snyder?
Aye.
Thank you. For the rest of the commission in the room, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. The motion passes. And now we are on to NBTC 2025 general and administrative budget. We will not be voting tonight, but discussing it, as well as your 24-25 work plan. Tonight we have staff presenting the preliminary 2025 general and administrative budget and work plan, which will both come back for action in January. Kate and Scott are still here. If you'd like to give us your presentation.
Chair, in fact, so we do have, we're gonna have it on the screen. There's also materials in front of you. We are gonna speak a little bit about an additional budget amendment that was handed out. Overall, we anticipate fiscal year 25 to be a really big year for NBTC, in particular, focusing on two of our major program areas. And for example, we're gonna be talking about, of course, the legislative agenda a little bit later this evening, as well as all the WMATA work. And so we anticipate in FY 25 is gonna be a big year for really sort of diving in, analyzing, understanding the financial needs of all of our transit systems, whether it be WMATA, Erie, and also all of our local bus systems. And really in advance of what was likely going to be seeking a substantial request for dedicated sustainable funding. We also know that our Route 7 BRT planning efforts that we know at some point may be handed off to another entity, but for now we have a very important earmark that we're working through and working with all of our jurisdictions, and that's really going to be in full steam in 25. And over the last couple of meetings with the executive committee, we've had conversations about adding an additional analyst position to NBTC. And so the conversations and confirmed with the executive committee a little bit earlier this evening is for this conversation to include consideration of an additional junior level program analyst position to support these two main program areas. Just to give you a sense, our program analysts are typically professionals that have recently graduated out of Prince Graduate School, are fairly new in their careers. They really provide incredible support, whether it be doing diving into numbers or GIS or helping writing things. So it's a whole range of really good, solid analytical skills that's supporting all of our program managers. In general, we're an organization that's very hybrid in the way that we do work. And so we do not have a one-to-one program manager, program analyst situation at all. And so this is adding sort of that pool of analysts as is portrayed on the information here. And I know Scott's going to get into the other details, but I want to put this up front so that you have a little bit of time to think through. And again, action is not till next week. We do have an additional information about sort of how that fits within the bigger picture, with that additional position being fully allocated just about $98,900. So just put that out there, but I'm getting a little bit in the weeds right now. So in many ways, I want to kind of hand it back to Scott to bring it back up a little bit. But because this is something that came directly from the executive committee, I want to kind of put it up front in the presentation. If Scott wants to go ahead and tell a little bit more about what we're looking at moving forward on our budget.
So next slide, please. So this slide's an high-level overview of NBTC's June Day expenses. And you can basically roll up our expenses into four main categories: salaries and related payroll costs, net contracted services, and then all other expenses. And not surprisingly, salaries and related costs make up most of the budget, 74%. Contracted services equal 12%, and this includes technical support for the commuter choice program, research support, legal, HR support, auditing, and state legislative services. And then the lease for NBTC's office space is 9%, with other expenses totaling around 5%. So next slide, please. So moving on to revenue, this is how our budget is funded. Most of the funding, of course, comes from revenue taken off the top of state aid that's provided to NBTC for the member jurisdictions. In fiscal year 24, we are managing 295 million of state assistance, and so less than 1.1% of that would be directly towards NBTC's budget. The local jurisdictions also provide direct contributions to NBTC, and that equals 6% of the budget. And commuter choice revenue makes up about 14% of the total. And that's funding to support the direct cost of carrying out the program, such as payroll and technical support that is included in the budget. Other revenue includes other project chargebacks and interest earnings, and that makes it up about 7% of the total. So this includes grant revenue for the intern program and Vision 7 program, and staff support for VRE as well. And then there's a carryover surplus that's included as a source of revenue. And that's the result of favorable, positive budget variances previous years in excess of our minimum operating requirements. Next slide, please. So this slide summarizes expenditures included in the full budget document, which is included in the materials. Now, to be clear, this does not include the option that Kate is referring to. This is the base proposed budget itself. So for this slide, I plan to highlight only the more significant changes. Overall, the proposed budget shows an increase in total expenses of $302,500, and that equals 6.9% over the current fiscal year. Most of this increase is due to salaries and related costs. So the first line, salaries and wages, shows a 4.3% increase. And in this proposed budget, it holds the staff levels constant, does not include the option, and includes a provision for cost of living and merit increases for existing staff. Benefits and other payroll costs are expected to increase about 20% this year. And this is caused largely by two lines: health insurance and retirement contributions. So this summer, we experienced over 13% increase in our premiums for the health insurance. And this, of course, directly impacts the fiscal year 25 budget. So historically, our rates are around 3.5% to 5%. This large increase, we've been told by our advisor, is basically caused by high inflation levels. And he says this is pretty much across the board of what he's seeing with most carriers. Retirement contributions will also experience a large increase, and that's due to more plan participants, more senior staff, and also for the past 2 years, we've had the ability to apply forfeited non-vested pension funds against our vote contributions. For fiscal year 25, we don't expect to have many of these funds available. So administrative costs are shown in total with some detail below, and they increase 4.2% overall. Rents, of course, are based upon the fixed lease for NBTC's office space. The increase in travel, training, and meetings line is due largely to inflation of travel costs and also recently added staff. The budget for communications and outreach, which is included in the publications, supplies, and outreach line, that shows an increase in anticipated increased outreach efforts in 25, which would include those related to dedicated transit funding. Contract services show an increase of 8.5% overall. This increase is due to additional funding mainly for the research support line, which totals about $250,000, offset slightly by anticipated decreases in computer choice support. So the research support line was first included in our fiscal year 23 budget at the commission's direction. And this funds several in-house research efforts. Most recently, it has included the update from the value of transit study, support for the WMATA operating working group. The anticipation of NBTC's research analysis strategic plan, which will be brought to the commission in the spring of 2024. Additional funding has been included in this line. That's about all I have for expenditures. Moving on, next slide, please. Moving on to revenues. So similar to the previous slide, this is just a summary of the revenues included in the proposed budget. Local contributions, which are made up of the local share from the state aid received by NBTC and direct contributions, increased by $308,700 or 9.5% in the current fiscal year. Interest includes our best estimate of returns we expect in 25. Project chargebacks decreased slightly due to less anticipated funding from the computer choice program and direct costs that are included in the budget. Appropriated surplus or carryover fund is expected to remain about constant with the current year. And as I mentioned, this represents prior year favorable budget variances that carried forward. So any questions on the revenue? Now, as Kate mentioned, we do have this option, additional position, and Kate, you have in front of you, what we're showing is the total expenditures according to the proposed budget that I just reviewed. And the increase over the current year, $302,500. The additional position would be additional $98,900 for a total expenditure increase of $401,400.
Thank you, Scott. And I know before we start the conversation on this position, on the executive committee, we've had a conversation over the past two sessions. So I appreciate that. Matt, I would like to maybe share a little bit of the discussions we've had and why the executive committee did recommend that Kate and her team bring this forward as an option for the commission to consider.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we did have good discussion, not this, both times, but pretty extended discussion about this additional position. I think a couple of members we really did our due diligence and thought about the amount of work and total that's there, the consulting resources that we sought to bring to bear, but wanting to have enough capacity. So those non-executive committee questions, I feel like this is one where we really support that position.
And if I can add, I think I was one of those members who were a little bit on in the fence from the last time to this one, and a couple of things that were shared in our committee that I think are important to bear in mind that this made me feel more comfortable feeling that this was important. Is number one, hearing and Kate, if you can in a minute share a little bit more about the amount of work that's been contracted out. And I think perhaps by some state support that we don't know if it will be here this year, and that work that's been done contracted rather than being brought in-house, and being able to have the support to do that. Number two, thinking about just the level of increase, both NBTC taking this role and the WMATA conversation, and I know we'll be reading the report together soon. We know that NBTC really has taken a leadership role in this important work, and I hope we'll continue to be able to have the ability to provide this kind of support to our jurisdictions and to us going forward through the next typical WMATA conversations. And I think providing a lot of leadership as well as research and guidance for us and our jurisdictions to be able to look at. And then finally, I know we at our board had a discussion on Tuesday about BRT 7 and wanting to ensure that Envision Route 7 as a timeline moves along swiftly. We do have one on-board staff member working on that now, Victor, but making sure that we support both for the research as well as, you know, the coordination and support for the existing staff and for our jurisdictions as we move through that and trying to make sure that that continues to go on a 2-year timeline and having the support for that. So I think that kind of conveyed, I think from my end as to why it would be important to make sure that there's that.
No, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I know one thing we didn't touch on, but just to give you a sense, and then if you just go to the next slide, is the volumes. We have, you know, it's incredible the amount of products and coordination, all those sorts of things. I don't mind flipping to the next slide, that we have in our work plan. This draft work plan is included. And indeed, I think a lot of the work that we did, that Andrew did this year was supported by consultant support. We're getting to a place now, and I think it's really quite remarkable. I know there was a conversation about this at the last commission meeting, is that NBTC as a body, NBTC as staff, we are very much in the middle of conversations about future funding for WAA and our ability to be quick, responsive, of both, also ensure we have staff redundancy where appropriate, to meet those calls is really important. And we had consulting support this year. Moving forward, there may be some opportunities within the smaller amount of money, but I think our target, if we look at having state aid, might be in different places than in focusing in this area. And so I think that's really important. And likewise, as you mentioned, we have some really fantastic work funded for doing the planning studies for Route 7. But as you mentioned, that at some point moves into a bigger project. We're completing the things that we've started as an organization. The strategic future of that involves a lot of engagement, a lot of conversations, a lot of discussion, actually even with your own boards, and making sure that we have good staff team rather than just one individual on that. I think is really important. And so again, there's no decision this evening. This is to put this out there. We'd be bringing this back in January for a vote. And so I just greatly appreciate your consideration of adding that additional position.
You can do that. I know there'll probably be some questions, so we'll happy to take those now. But just a reminder that, you know, there's still time to continue to ponder and think through it and have that conversation. And as the vote will not be tonight, this is for January. So to that, yes, Ms. Garvey.
Thank you. First, on the position, I'm fine. We need to mention the whole legislature. And that's a real important part of the.
That's this fiscal year.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, there's just a lot, so I'm fine with that. And just a question, who does have health insurance?
Kaiser Permanente.
It is Kaiser, because I don't think we've had that much of an issue. My dad, maybe we have. Let's check. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other?
Yeah, because pool, maybe we need another pool to pool with. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I did notice in there, I think you mentioned that you do have that buffer, you budget for all staff, even if all staff are not taking
Correct, we
the,
budget for all positions, even if the current staff member in that position is not a member of the health insurance plan.
so is there often sort of a leftover from that?
They'll just about always be. Yes.
And
That's why we have a rollover budget. We have a surplus every year.
sounds like maybe looking at, if there are options for that. Is that what I'm hearing, out there in the future? Yes, Mr. Lawson. No, I'm sorry, pass it.
I think that's is absolutely necessary. No question about that. My question is about what is rather the profile is somebody just one of the transportation analysts, policy analysts, or somebody specific.
Well, I think
I mean, I know that the economic name, but right now, I think one of the biggest issues that we have is really a
So in fact, every time we do the vacancy, we obviously look at the talents we have in-house, and so how this ends up complementing and filling spaces. So that's, obviously now that we're getting a firm, we'll be working at looking at that. We're very fortunate because we actually, just in the last year or so, did hire a financial analyst and under Scott's team, Noman, and so he's actually been incredibly helpful looking at revenues and those sorts of things. So I think we do have a wonderful set of skill set in that. That said, there's a reason it's called an analyst. We do want good, solid analytical minds that can be contributing to all of this. As it is right now, we have an incredible talent with folks who can dive in and do, GIS or diving into different performance data, et cetera. Never mind the fact of finding the folks who can write well and all that good stuff. So in some ways, there's a little bit of generalization just because of the nature of that, getting somebody fairly new in their career. But no matter what, we will make sure they complement what we have going within NBTC now to make sure that we cover all those skills and.
Okay, any other questions? Excuse me, Mom. Thank you so much, Scott. Okay, absolutely. And please feel free to send any along if you have them before the January meeting. To that, we are moving on to our WMATA reports. We do have both our WMATA board chair, Bob Medberg, here to give the WMATA board report, as well as our WMATA committee chair, Walter Alford, Andrew, and NBTC staff to present the two action items. To keep things moving, and we're doing great today, we will hold questions and comments until the end. So let me turn it over to Paul first.
Okay, I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible. There's quite a bit to touch upon. So next week, everyone should expect the general manager to introduce his proposed fiscal year 25 budget. This budget will reflect his and the board's fiduciary duty to put forth a balanced budget that is based on known conditions and existing legal constraints to any increases in operating assistance. The tool available to the management and the board to balance the budget are limited to service reductions, fare increases, management savings, and increasing preventative maintenance expense transfers. With all that said, everyone should expect that this will be a very unpleasant budget proposal with severe service reductions. To make things more difficult, we face a timing challenge as well. The legislative calendar in Virginia, WMATA's budget process do not line up well. The challenge will be the timing of any General Assembly relief on rebasing and the timeline for WMATA's budget approval. This doesn't even begin to get into the timing issues related to layoff notices as was laid out in the existing labor agreements. We also have challenges with the DC Council and the Maryland legislature as it relates to the legislative calendars as well. While the timing is a challenge, we will successfully change those conditions, namely rebasing, the legislative 3% operating cap, and provide additional funding. Then the WMATA board can work toward and ultimately approve a very different budget, one that minimizes reductions to service, is fiscally achievable, fiscally achievable for our jurisdictions and keeps our ridership recovery going. In most years, the general manager's proposed budget and the board adopted budget are pretty close with very small changes. With our collective efforts and support in Richmond, DC, and Annapolis, the board can ensure that the budget it adopts in April will look very different than the one that is proposed next week. So we assume that there's going to be a lot of discussion about the general manager's budget. As part of this larger regional discussion, the fiscal year 25 budget, we have seen an initial proposal for additional funding for WMATA from Maryland. I'm sure you saw yesterday some things leaked out, but today there was a lot of coverage on that. There are two important things to remember. The actual cost for funding jurisdictions will adjust many times throughout this entire process. And proposals for additional funding are just that, simply proposals at this point. As I mentioned earlier, the timing and interaction between WMATA's budget process and the actions taken by legislatures will keep us all working and reacting in real time. The NBTC staff, the jurisdictional staff, the Audit Committee will be very engaged in this over the next several months, and also working with the GRPT and Jennifer, and our legislative partners as well. Let's see, last month, the Finance and Capital Committee received a capital program outlook that sets the stage for the fiscal year 25 budget and helps illustrate the trade-offs that funding constraints will create for the capital program. One of the tools available for the WMATA board to help close the operating budget gap is maximizing the transfer of eligible preventive maintenance expenses from the operating budget to the capital budget. While this does not pose any short-term risks to the capital budget, it does accelerate the exhaustion of that dedicated capital funding to fiscal year 28 or earlier. This sets up further constraints for the 6-year capital CIP, which is based around state of good repair and modernization work. If this transfer were to be pursued at its maximum, again in fiscal year 26, then that puts programs like the zero emissions bus and the 8,000 at risk. In your written report, you can find additional materials on WMATA's recent clean audit. This is sixth or seventh clean audit now for WMATA, which is really great. DC started 24-hour bus service, which has been reimbursable by the district. Our fiscal year 24 first year quarter year-to-date forecast, which shows favorability to the budget. I also want everyone to know that earlier this week, WMATA began repressing the wheels on the 7,000 series cars with the new standard. This will allow WMATA to resume full maintenance intervals and gradually add more and more 7,000 series cars to service. Also, we are going to be doing automated door trial on the red line, which I'm sure you saw in the paper, which would be a really important step for WMATA. A half ago, we met with the Washington Metropolitan Safety Commission, the safety commission that oversees WMATA. We met with them in our new integrated control center out in Alexandria. We had a good their leadership, our leadership, and some of their board members were present. We saw also IG resigns, and we have an acting IG. Kevin comes to us from a law firm. He's a partner there. He has extensive experience. He was part of the fraud office at the DOJ for a number of years. He was a deputy U.S. attorney. So he brings a lot of investigative and general management and good, solid experience to the table. So we really have Kevin for the last year or two. So that's it. Walter.
Thank you, Paul, and really appreciate your work. And those of you who had a chance to read the full WMATA committee report, it's impressive. And I appreciate Walter will be able to give us a little overview after we both the mid and long-term recommendations, finance, as well as on operations. So take it away.
Yeah, just very briefly before we go to the action items, a couple of announcements on the WMATA committee. We're going to be meeting again January 18th at 6 p.m. And we're going to be talking about the WMATA FY 2025 budget, fun times. And then the next meeting, February 15th at 6:30 p.m. So Madam Chair, I'd recommend that we combine the two action items, 7A and B. That's both the NBTC annual report on WMATA and the 7C resolution 25. So, well, actually, before they do that, if I could give them a shout out. So
it is impressive.
You know, we had great support from the team, both on the program side and also on the communication side. Worked really well with the committee and really did a great job. This is a moving target and some complicated issues. Really appreciate that. So, yes. Be happy to turn it over. I don't know Alan or Andrew? Or-
Sure. So from Chair Alcorn, staff have been very busy, since I think summer, even throughout the spring, working on this, report and the content therein. The commission received a briefing on the key recommendations of the report last month. A full draft of the report and a copy of the resolution for the two action items before you are both included in your meeting materials this evening. Just give some very brief highlights of the report. This year's report is called Action for NBTC in the General Assembly, and it highlights our two immediate midterm priorities. You've heard those mentioned several times tonight, but they are to rebase time. WMATA's base budget and the subsidy bill that they sent to account for the impacts of the pandemic. Metro, and this would also help protect our jurisdictions from getting penalized and having state aid withheld, sort of the transit industry in general, adapt to the ongoing effects. The second near-term priority is to advocate for additional state aid to help us through the next 2 years while we simultaneously engage the region to finally secure long-term sustainable dedicated. Our value of transit studies documented that the collective transit systems in Northern Virginia can generate approximately 1.5 billion for regional fund and Metro Rail of that. Simply put, the Commonwealth has a vested interest in helping ensure Metro's long-term success. These priorities are also included in NBTC's 2024 legislative agenda, which you'll hear about for the next several months. We've got a lot of hard work coming up on the next General Assembly session. And NBTC will help lead the way in educating, answer questions, and engaging with our members to help make sure that Metro succeeds and drives the economy of Northern Virginia. The sort of next priority is that while Virginia and the region take temporary actions to get through the next few budgets, the region must continue to work on developing long-term solutions. So we cannot lose sight of that. The mid and long-term recommendations in the report provide a framework for Virginia and the region to get started on those long-term funding and accountability solutions. Staff are requesting two actions by the commission tonight. The first is to authorize the executive director to send NBTC's 2023 report on the performance and condition of WMATA to the Governor General Assembly. And the second is to approve resolution for 25-23, affirming NBTC's near-term priorities for Metro funding. So happy to answer any questions about those two actions. Back to Chair Alcorn.
Got nothing else?
If I may, I did have one question. I mean, I did. It was a page turner, thank you. And I appreciate that there were, it really is broad, deep in every direction and that you went so far. And to also sort of look at other jurisdictions and compare those. My one question, I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. I think it's a great recommendation. I have it on page 18 of the full report, focus area and the oversight number 5. Which is recommending the coordinating the audit rights to create an advisory committee, which, as you mentioned, is allowable per WMATA. So having an advisory committee that would be represented by the jurisdictions, sort of to help coordinate some of the things we're already asking via audit, but to have an additional audit committee. And that would have regional financial staff. I don't know if you can just give a little, I think it's a great idea in concept, but I just want to better understand that recommendation.
So right now, each funding jurisdiction has the right to audit. Many have in the past. It tends to be intermittent. And I think from the Metro perspective, they can be faced with multiple jurisdictions auditing the same thing. At different times or at the same time, asking for the same information and reaching different conclusions, which can create kind of a larger governance challenge. So the sort of outcome that we are advocating for is to have, so there's an onus on the jurisdictions to coordinate that. And I think our recommendation here is to do it through the Metro board. And that would, I think, help because everyone would get their audit objectives completed. Would be that, I think, the step we would use existing governance structures, and sort of authorities. And then from the metro perspective, the idea is to only that kind of once and in coordination rather than do it multiple repetitive times and potentially reach different.
And the committee, if I'm reading it correctly, would be made up of financial staff, not elected leaders,
Correct.
but the jurisdictions who are part of this, their financial staff.
Correct, and there have been instances, sort of less formalized where, sort of CFOs from the region have taken on this role. And I think ultimately, the recommendation is something I think for the board to deliberate on as well, but this is sort of our recommendation to them.
Yeah, personally, I have to say that in addition to the other recommendations, I find very helpful, both the coordination and reducing extra time spent by multiple questions, but also knowing that we as jurisdictions could have our financial experts be able to coordinate and ask for that oversight of the audit function.
Absolutely.
I'm sure if I could, I think it's important to have the right people in the room because we
But
do get a lot of requests from even within a state, within different agencies and with different priorities.
Yeah, it's weekend.
Yeah, the only question I have on page 14, where we get started is on recommendations. Recommendation number one of the sub-points. Office of Inspector General findings to improve controls of governance and explore alternative retirement plans. I guess my question is, given this last year hasn't been real good in terms of the IG's office or stability. I know we, as a personnel matter, I'm not asking questions about the personnel matter, but what exactly are we asking? And here, I don't know the findings. I know there's some challenges there. Our recommendation is that we put their findings. Where are we going with the office of the IG? I know there's an interim director, so what confidence can we have that that's a function that's working in Metro and one that their recommendations and findings to be implemented?
Yeah, look, all their work plans, their investigations, their audits, whatever it is they have, continue. None of the work is stopping. The board has never told that office what to do, what not to do, what they shouldn't do. We've never done that. Anytime they wanted to come talk to us, I've always said yes. And, but I think there are issues that in terms of management and judgment internally that I think we have to get a sense of and just sort of address once and for all. And there are some legal things that are in legal posture right now that we can't talk about. But, again, this board, we did not make the decision lightly whatsoever. It was over a period of time, multiple conversations. We understand how it looks. And I think once more information is able to come out, I think people will definitely understand and appreciate what's going on.
Yeah, so I guess my question is related to this, that we're comfortable with that language and our recommendation based on what you know about the current operation. We should be comfortable saying we're supporting implementing it based on. And I asked that.
Yeah.
It would be an opportunity if we wanted to enhance their operation or make suggestions to things that they should be doing, that this would be the opportunity to do that. And all we're doing is saying, implement what they find.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that's what you intend, and based on what you know about their operation, that's the appropriate thing to have in here.
Yeah, I mean, their findings are their findings. I mean, that's their independence. And, again, we don't tell them what to put in reports or not reports. But I think that, there are other things we're working with the acting IG to have him give us a sense of what's going on, given his experience that he brings to the table, which is pretty significant. Just understanding what the office in general is doing. But in terms of its core function, things are still moving ahead, everything's moving forward. you know, you've got a lot of really good, young, middle tier people there.
I mean, that's.
No, and I understand, it is a delicate issue.
It is,
Yeah.
and the timing is awful, as we know, when we're trying to build,
Yes.
support in the larger community and confidence behind Metro, internal controls and the money we're sending in context of conversation about additional audit function, which I think is absolutely appropriate. I just wanted to hear that from you, gives me a comfort level, but I do think that the sooner that gets settled, whatever settled means, or leads to a product, the easier it is for us to build confidence in something that still the region has to do. You know that.
Yeah.
Any other questions from commissioners, Ms. Bagley and Mr. Lawson-Shaw? And I'll go around.
This question might be more suited to Commissioner Smedberg, but the Maryland money that you referenced that they announced this week, is that equivalent essentially in stepping up as the rebaselining proposal conversation as on the Virginia side? Is that the dollar figure we would have liked to have seen?
Yeah, I think they're assuming things, all three jurisdictions can agree to something. They put in a little bit more than the something. Hoping that others would match them is, I think, their hope. But to do what they did, they're basically gutting local funding. And there are a lot of significant cuts to like some really important programs. And, you know, I think they're taking a really critical look at the department in general, and, you know, they've got issues with their funding model. Their trust fund has issues that they've got to deal with long-term, like our funding model, mobile modest funding model. The Commonwealth is going to have stress on its commitments as well, I assume. So, you know, everyone is dealing, the district is dealing, but are arguably going to be pretty sizable deficits. So, you know, I think they were hoping that they do that. It's 150, 150, and then it, Andrew, 250, 250. I think after that, or it goes up to 250. But even there's going to be a lot. You saw the pushback coming from all levels of their congressional, state, and local jurisdictions. And I'm sure Annapolis is going to be heavily debating that. But, you know, the good thing is that there is support there for Metro in doing something, but how they get there at the end of the day or what that figure is, you know, it's going to be the challenge. So, you know, and it'll be the challenge for all of us.
And so that figure that they're proposing might not be the final figure that
Correct.
comes from Maryland.
Correct.
Is it likely to be smaller after the General Assembly their General Assembly does, we don't know.
I mean, it just depends on what their
What is your?
elected leaders look like. I mean, their calendar is a little longer than ours. So, yes, a little.
It is a little bit longer.
It's still the same larger timing.
But given our requirements with labor and other things that we have to do and the timeline it takes to do all that. So even with no commitments, so starting in January, we will have to start notifying people if there are to be reductions. You know, so there's a lot of things that have to be put in place starting right away.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Robin?
Thank you. It's really impressive work. It's kind of the best synopsis of the challenges I've seen. Just a couple of questions, one more comment, maybe a question, and I raised this at one of the committee meetings, 10 years, maybe 15 years, I've been asking. No one has been able to explain to me how the changes to the Wolf Act would actually reduce costs. I don't believe that they would. The arbitrators can now, if they choose, take into account jurisdiction's ability to pay. There's nothing preventing it. People talk about reforming the Wolf Act and then requiring them to take into account the jurisdiction's ability to pay. The federal compact members are Maryland, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the District of Columbia. Their ability to pay is effectively unlimited. I mean, there isn't a limit, right? They have broad taxing authority. And no one has given me an example of a similar situation with a public transit agency that has that kind of arbitration clause where an ability to pay element actually puts downward pressure on cost. So I just have never understood it. No one's been able, just one of those things we keep saying year after year after year, but I don't get it. And I don't expect you to answer it because no one's been able to answer it for 15 years. I've been asking.
I know, they're pretty good, so.
Yeah, I know, you guys are the best, so. And then, just related to that, the footnotes are really good. I went back and refreshed my memory of the WAA report, and I was in some of those meetings in 2017. And we do point out that there are several recommendations in the WAA report that have not been implemented by WMATA. It's important to clarify, they're very minor, and they're in the context of the WAA report stating that WMATA's labor costs are comparable. They're at the national average of other large transit agencies. So the recommendations are some of the things that maybe are pulling WMATA up a little bit, but there are other elements of pay and benefits that are pulling WMATA down. They all equal out to they're at the average. So it's very minor. I just don't want anyone to take away from it thinking, well, there's big money in the LaHood report recommendations if WMATA just was able to implement. And then a question, not an objection, just a question in terms of the request for state aid. How did we settle on the 50-50 match? Other than 50-50 seems fair. It's roughly where we are now. Why aren't we asking for 80-20 or 70-30? How did we get here?
It's definitely something we can have up for discussion. The current code in the existing funding, and I'm gonna kind of look to Director DeGroote, but she's a little bit more familiar because I've looked at it recently, talks about the state not being able to provide more than 50%. Historically, our jurisdictions have been closer to the low 40% from state aid. So we were just sort of reaching a little bit higher, closer to what is the identified maximum. Not saying that you couldn't do something different in budget language. But that was the general approach.
The language is that it's in the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund section of the code that no more than 50% can be provided by state aid.
And that has been there a long time, right?
No, it hasn't. It was a change made during 2023 general assembly session.
So before that, the trajectory up to that was consistent with that number.
I think indicated it was in the 40% range, except for the couple of COVID years where it was much higher.
But that 40% range was the norm.
The norm
for a long time, even without.
Yeah.
You have your hand up.
That was covered.
Okay, go ahead and start.
So picture recognition, I don't know if, I have no knowledge about the wolf act at all, but it sounds to me, feels to me, that it's like we all say there's no money, there's no money, there's no money, and then we cut taxes and everybody gets a $200 check. We have no money, there's no money, and then we cut taxes. So, anyway, I know we all know that, but it's a game that we play and we keep pretending.
I got 400 actually.
Did you? Oh my gosh.
I guess I got 200. My wife got. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, which I think we should repeat a fair amount. This bit about having no money is just drives me crazy sometimes. And then, Paul, I do not want to be the enforcement head on the IG flood, hopefully the commission had to say. Sure. Do you have a sense of when you'll have something to kind of important present to, these reports?
Yeah, I mean,
we're talking weeks, months.
Yeah, the acting IG, the initial thing, we'll be there for 3 months, maybe we can go month to month after that. We're gonna do a national search. We're gonna get outside of the BC federal IG bubble. We're gonna talk to 3 firms, we're gonna select a firm, so the executive committee will act as the search committee, like we did for the general manager, or proceed there, so we're gonna act as quickly as we can, but more importantly, we are gonna do a national search and we are gonna get outside and the DC federal energy.
That, I think that's great.
You know, I think it's part of.
Given, yeah, you're the, yeah. One different things. I was saying a little bit, I mean, will there be some sort of a report or analysis of what all went on, you know, why things are just difficult to say?
I mean, board.
How we got to this point?
No, not yet. I mean, but if we do, I suspect it probably wouldn't be something public, but if, let's say.
Starts at 7.
We can, you know, we would do that.
Yeah.
After.
Yeah, so that would be, I mean, when we're trying to, you know, advocate for controls, for next year's gonna be tough. We're all gonna be doing it.
Yeah, but again, you know, all their work plans,
Yeah,
again, all that is continuing. It's not like the office is not doing anything. All the work continues. Yeah.
Which is reality.
Like I say,
But
hiring auditors.
I mean, there are just some things we can't talk.
I know.
And
That
I think,
totally
again,
understand.
once we can, I think people will
Yeah.
definitely understand and probably applaud.
Exactly, and when will that be? That's what I'm saying, are we talking months?
You know, we'll see.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and Matt, before, let me make sure, was there anyone virtually who wanted to ask for comments on the report?
None for me.
Perfect, yeah, go ahead,
Madam
Matt.
Chair, just Dave Snyder, is it clear from the materials, the opportunities for the public and this commission to weigh in? And not just formal you know, the conduit and the places that and the times that we can impact this upcoming budget after we review it?
You mean weigh in, not on this report, but on the next round of budget for WMATA?
Right.
That's the committees. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to,
We have 2 WMATA committees planned right now for January and February, and especially on January, that will be the topic du jour. And once the budget comes out next week, it gives us a little bit of time to dive in at the staff level, do a little bit of analysis from our point of view, and have a very, very hopefully healthy discussion in January.
And Metro will open up a public comment period sometime early next year, as they have every year for the budget cycle. Will obviously help facilitate that information, and through the committee will help craft specific comments as we have to submit for the public.
but that is an excellent reminder to put in a plug for
Come to the committee.
Come to the committee. You can watch online on YouTube, January 18th at, on the live stream at 6 p.m. And February 15th at 6:30 p.m. And then if you can't make it, you can then watch it on YouTube. And we will share out once we have both the budget and the public comment. So, yes, Mr. Strong.
Very quickly, DC, seeing Maryland made me wonder if DC might be inclined to act. And this sort of, I don't know, Paul, if you, then what's happened or act sooner than later. But I know that there are challenges within DC. I just wonder if you had any comment on that or any thoughts? Or if there is process related stuff that can help us know what time we might be see it. If you don't want to, either Andrew or Alan want to speculate. I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been really diving into the budget.
Okay.
Quite a bit. You know, obviously Metro is critically important for them, for their return. The normalcy, or as best it's gonna be there. So, you know, we suspect there will be something coming. We've heard rumblings, but
sure,
you know, again, they are dealing with a pretty significant fiscal challenge ahead.
Great. And then the only other thought is with the 50 million administrative costs that we worked on, and the process there, certainly with respect to previous DC administrations in general, I wonder, I could probably use a little, I've done some engaging, of course, with Alan and Kate this week, but I wonder if there's a way that we could package the next steps of administrative cost management, you know, keeping in mind that James's point, but I think that might be a place for the next couple of weeks, and I'll engage with Kate. But I just wanted to surface that thought, conversation today that really maybe we feel as though, you know, we need to break through to point out that Brandy is continuing to manage with accountability and manage thoughtfully. So I'll just loop in Kate, but I kind of wanted to surface it at least a little bit in this.
Maybe Walter.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, thank you all. That was a robust discussion. Again, thank you so much. The staff is really, I agree with James, one of the best reports I've seen in depth. Both the chart, the layout, and then the in-depth analysis of really every item I think I've heard, even considered. A lot of short-term and long-term, both finance and operations was reviewed. So thank you both so much for your work on that. To that, we will, and we'll ask for a motion to authorize both items to Executive Director to send the 2023 annual report on the performance and condition of WMATA to the Governor and General Assembly, and resolution number 2523 to affirm NBTC's near-term priorities for WMATA. Move. Do I have a second? Second, Ms. Garvey.
Sure.
Yes, any further discussion?
Yeah. I had a question about the resolution. When I met with Secretary Miller, it was his contention that Metro was decreasing ridership since before the pandemic, and the way this is worded under the fifth whereas, it says decreased revenue since the pandemic. Was revenue not decreasing before the pandemic at all? It was on the upswing? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I could, Senator,
Yeah.
you know, they use the figure of 2010, I think they start out with, but if you look at 19, was the highest ridership, we were breaking records.
Okay.
So they use those figures to.
You were on the upswing before the pandemic and then, okay.
Yeah.
And I believe, I'm trying to find the chart. Remember what chart that Linda showed? That I think we've just done above with ridership, but I think revenue is still on the notes, and I had it in here. If you find it, if you point it out, I mean, I'm not finding it again. The chart that I have, oh, here it is, page 3. Here we go, Metro ridership trends through 24, so that was just ridership. But I noticed in 23, really stood out that for the first time since the pandemic rail. Adapting spots, if I read that correctly. But really all of 23, we're seeing that rise, but we know that the revenue still continues to be not even about a quarter, is it, the 2019 levels. Very.
Revenue items, it's
Okay.
more than that.
It's a little higher.
A little high.
Yes.
Anyway, but I was happy to see with that. I know we talked about how rail has been so low, but 23, I was happy to see that it does finally go above. Generally in the right direction. All right, any further discussion? Okay, let me go ahead and begin the roll call vote with our virtual participants. Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Snyder?
Aye.
For the rest of the commission, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes. And I believe Mr. Scalzi and Mr. Cornhoff. Ms. Gould, they've all voted. Excellent. Okay. With those two actions completed, any final questions for Paul or Walter? Thank you so much. You really, I think, incredible work, and why I more than happy to see the request in the budget, because I think more of this is really helping us in our jurisdiction. Be those have that analysis we need for WMATA. As our chair of MBT's Legislative and Policy Committee, since Mr. Aguirre is joining us virtually, ask that we turn to our Executive Director, Kate McPace, for the report of the Legislative and Policy Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so indeed, the final version of the 2024 Legislative and Policy Agenda is being presented for action. Also under this section of the agenda, we will have an update by our legislative liaison, Amy Cyber, just gonna give us a bit of a state of play. And then followed up, we're gonna talk, just a little bit of, review and reflection on the fantastic forum we had, last Friday. So, one of the things I did want to pass, and I passed it along to the executive committee, earlier, is that, our February 1st commission meeting is going to be down in Richmond. I understand it's also VACO VML Day. We do plan on having a brief with legislators. We're working the schedule so it doesn't right up in conflict with the VACO VML things, but I think we're gonna have a great opportunity at the St. Paul's Church, very close to where the new General Assembly building is. So you'll hear a lot more about that. We definitely look forward to all of you joining us. Historically, it's been a while since we've had our meeting in Richmond. We always used to have those in February. We haven't in a while. We do not anticipate that this is something where we have action items. So it's not something we necessarily need to worry about quorum. However, it would be delightful to have as many commissioners there. And again, we are going to be working to have a number of General Assembly members come and drop by and meet and hear all about NBTC. So I did want to put that there. The other thing I wanted to highlight, and they're actually back on easels back in the room, is we have newly created legislative district maps for both the Virginia House and Senate that identify all of the transit routes and stations that are in all of those districts. They actually include PRTC as well as NBTC districts. We had those actually at our legislative event. And we do have those available for folks to take. We also have a wonderful handout for each of those talking about who the current members are. And so that's something, if you want, we probably have some here. If not, we can definitely make sure we get them to your offices if you'd like them. We've worked with PRTC and Gary to make that happen. So I greatly appreciate that. And so in front of you, include your materials, is the 2024 legislative and policy agenda. Just to focus a little bit, this is exactly or near exactly of the content of the priorities that we presented last month. We did do some clarity for for grammar and word consistency. We also did add the request to make sure that there was additional state aid that would be supporting our local metro funding bill and have that within the next state budget. And I know that was something that was asked for. So that is included in here. And so I'm happy to take any questions from the commission on that material prior to action.
Any questions from commissioners? I really appreciate it's easy to read, precise, beautiful, good visuals, and have a lot ahead of us. And Amy is with us in person. I thought I skipped. Yeah. Yeah.
Second.
You, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote, beginning with, virtual participants, Mr. Aguirre,
Aye.
Snyder,
Yes.
those in person, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That happens. Now we'll turn to our legislative, aid. So nice to see you, Amy Bernstein-Seibert. Brought us with the latest state of play, perhaps with all these new players, it still is not fully known, but we're so happy to have you here in person.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me. I know I can't believe this is the first meeting since the elections. It sort of feels like we've already lived 1,000 lives since then, but I was like, no, this is actually the first meeting since the election. It's crazy. So anyway, that was only a month ago. Seems like 6. And so for nothing. But anyway, so we have a whole new General Assembly coming in January. I think the final count, just for everybody to know, so obviously the Democrats took over the House and the Senate. That's a 51 and 21 person majority on each side, so very slim, but obviously still a big shift for everybody. And what we see out of that is there are going to be 34 new House members out of 117 new Senate members. So grand total of 51. That is a lot of new people. So more new people than we've ever seen, obviously. So what we're looking at now, obviously, is leadership has been chosen. People are looking at committee chairs and assignments, and that's the piece that we're sort of all kind of coming and looking and worrying about at the moment. Leadership in the Senate was determined right before Thanksgiving. Scott Surville was elected as the new majority leader. Mamie Locke is a caucus chair. Our very own Senator Evan is the vice chair of the caucus. Which is exciting. And then on the minority side, Senator Ryan McDougal is the minority leader in the Senate for the Republicans. On the House side, Don Scott is the speaker-elect. Charnel Herring is the majority leader, so one of our Northern Virginia folks. And Kathy Tran, another Northern Virginia folk, is gonna be the caucus chair. And on the other side, Todd Gilbert, who was the most recent Speaker of the House, will be the new minority leader for the Republicans. And so the Senate has already also determined all of their committee chairs and their assignments. And so the big one obviously is transportation for us, and that is going to be Senator Boysko. So she is new to that position as a chair. Obviously, before it was Dave Marsden, who's moving over to be chair of the Agricultural Committee, which deals with quite a bit of like renewable energy and other stuff as well, not just agriculture. And then obviously the other big change that's that we care a lot about is the Finance Committee, and that is Louise Lucas, and that is the Tidewater area. So those are the two major committees. Obviously, Senator Evans remains chair of General Laws, and lots of other changes for everything else. And in the House, we have heard about a couple committees. There are still 6 more to go. One of the ones we have not heard about is transportation. So we're still waiting to find out who the transportation chair will be. It was last time the Democrats were in control, Dolores McQuinn from the city of Richmond. And so it may or may not be her again. There's been some moving around of folks and seniority, so we're just kind of waiting to see if that ends up panning out or not. Luke Torian, obviously was chair of appropriations, and he was chair of Report as well. So obviously it'll be an interesting year. Like I said, lots of changes, lots of people to educate and learn about NBTC and Metro, and we will be working quite a bit on that. So happy to answer any questions, but I also do not want to take up a lot of time because I know it's a long meeting. So any questions or?
And thank you so much, Amy, and want to see if Adam has anything to add.
Yeah, no, I think Amy summarized the changes. I would say though that just as a point of information, I've asked to have drafted a study on the future of Metro or options for future Metro funding and VRE funding, to have a study conducted by JLARC, which is the Joint Legislative Audit Review Commission, which is highly regarded and considered very nonpartisan, so that we can potentially start, have some authoritative research, start the discussion that would be well regarded by all received. And I wanted to thank Kate. She assisted me with some of the language, and this was suggested by Mr. Smedberg to me at our public hearing in Alexandria. And I have it drafted for both introduction in the House and the Senate if we move ahead with it. I'm not sure yet who's going to carry it, if it'll be me or someone else, but I may talk to Senator Boysko to see if she has room for that or someone else. The studies are very limited in how many they'll do in a year, especially by JLARC. So we have to be strategic about it. And I'm talking to Delegate Vivian Watts. She had suggested that maybe it would be good to have someone else study it. I don't know exactly who, but I'm going to work with her before we introduce it.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator. The state of Maryland has had a blue ribbon panel in place now for a few months. And they are doing work looking at their trust funds, and funding options, future funding options. So they already have work on
It might be interesting to get a look at their authorizing legislation to put their panel together. Maybe Amy can help me or Kate. If we get a copy of that, we could just compare it to what we have, get back from the drafters to see if there are certain things that we want studied that maybe we didn't include or things that they approach differently. The idea is just to have authoritative, good information so that we can build consensus when we want to draw things to in a position to draw things to a conclusion.
Is there a thought on what the timing would be for that?
Yeah, well, we would introduce it this year, the study, and the bills that we introduce, even study resolutions, don't really take effect till July 1st. So the idea would be that we would, if it was expedited, that we would get back some sort of information before the next General Assembly session, before 2025. But I'm not sure yet how backed up JLARC is and how much consensus we can build. If we introduce it, we'll invite all the Northern Virginia legislators to co-sponsor it.
Yeah.
And one last point, I think it's important, and the general manager and I have really been stressing this, hopefully hopefully we'll be able to come to a short-term, solution for funding, sort of a stopgap. But then it's really important that we continue that conversation moving forward for the long term. Because without that, we're just gonna be going through this exercise year after year after year.
Yeah, and that's.
And it's gonna get worse and worse and worse.
That's what this is for, is to arm us with authoritative information and research by well-regarded people that can help continue the conversation and that there won't be questions, because people say a lot, James was referring to the LaHood report recommendations. I chair the Unemployment Commission of Virginia, and people say at the meeting, they say to the BEC staff, they say, what about recommendation number 40 from the report 2 years ago? Why hasn't that been implemented? So they do pay attention to JLARC studies. I mean, and there's a panel of legislators that actually, I guess, ratifies or approves them, but it's very deep dive and very well regarded on both sides of the aisle, I would say.
We really want to thank you for moving that forward.
Yes.
Happy to help.
We all hope the education ones will be
And it has to be very, I just want to add again, and a great deal of thank you to Senator Evan. As many of you know, especially those working on the WAA Committee, NBTC has started some of this work. And so knowing that we can provide the analytical work that we did this year, but providing it to JLARC may be a really good place to do that, to keep that conversation going. And so the fact that he was interested in introducing something like that provides sort of the next second step to the work that our staff and our team did for the WAA Committee this year. So
yeah, it's kind of like a little bit of a blue ribbon stamp. They can look at studies that you've done or that Metro's done and kind of just evaluate them. And sometimes they hire outside consultants on certain issues to just validate and perhaps take in some of our work and maybe take it to another level or at least kind of evaluate it and say this is these facts square with the reality of the situation.
That's helpful to know if we can be helpful in trying to get some of our representatives to support that and sign on. Yes, go ahead, James, and then we'll move on.
To that point, I just thank you for including VRE. And as you're looking for legislators to support that, please include those in the PRTC jurisdictions. You might have a chance of making it bipartisan because I think we got some Republicans that represent VRE here. So it'd be great to have them engage in that process as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Excellent team effort. And appreciate our work as a board, and thank you, Senator Evans, for leading on that. With that, thank you, Amy. Hope you get home to your kiddos. We are now moving on to just a quick recap of there she is, incredible legislative forum. Last week feels like ages ago, but it was last week. A big kudos to all of the NBTC staff, and especially Declan as well, who helped organize this event in a new location. And just want to see if you want to tell us a little bit more, especially for those who did not have a chance to join us last week.
Absolutely, thank you. I am going to keep this pretty brief. I think a lot of you were there. On Friday, December 1st, NBTC, in partnership with PRTC and VRE, held our annual legislative forum. This marked our first time holding this event at the GMU Mason Square campus in Arlington. And we partly chose this venue because it was transit accessible, which is a big part of our messaging. So we figured that was a nice change. This year's event featured special guest DRPT Director Jennifer DeBrule, keynote speaker Kathy Hollinger, who is the CEO at Greater Washington Partnership, and a Northern Virginia transit panel featuring WMATA General Manager and CEO Randy Clark, VRE CEO Rich Dalton, OmniRide Executive Director Bob Schneider, and our very own NBTC Executive Brittany Pipe. The panel was moderated by NBTC veteran and current CEO of the Placement Community Alliance, Katie Crystal. And we were also lucky enough to have NBTC, PRTC, and VRE board chairs provide welcoming remarks and introduction. This year's event focused on the confluence of business and transit and how both rely on the other to continue fostering growth in our super region, as Ms. Hollinger called it. This year we hit a record 146 attendees, and we were thrilled to have so many people attend and participate in this year's forum. Lastly, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who helped make this year's event a success, and especially to the class who left me with big shoes to fill, and could have done it without her. Happy to answer any questions.
No, thank you so much, and we have a wonderful event, even with the location under construction, you all pulled up an excellent event. Any other questions for Hanover? Yes.
It's just a comment on the location was excellent. I love it on this.
You're
I just had to say that because Justin wasn't so. So I will say that, I don't know when we got Kathy, but she was on message and she was excellent to have. I thought the panel was great too, and everything else, I know it's a ton of work to do events, but I just, I couldn't have found a better speaker to be our keynote, because she got to highlight and we bring her into the fold at this moment. So thanks for all of that.
Good, well, thank you again for work. We will now move on to VRE. Had a big day today for passenger rail in Virginia. With the awarding of, I believe, $729 million grant from the Federal Railroad Administration to support the Long Ridge and many of the track projects necessary to make that project work. We have Rich Dalton here to give his CEO reports. We also have our VRE Operations Board Chair, James Walkinshaw, to tell us more and to introduce the three VRE action items for today. Rich, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Commission members, and yes, several of you, counting about 6 around the table, maybe, we were together early this morning, but I will say this has actually been not just an exciting day today, but we had an exciting day yesterday at the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority's board meeting. And there was some very, very historical project awards and stuff. So I'm gonna leave you there because Director DeBrule is in the room. I'm gonna allow her to elaborate on some of those, but it was good to see everybody this morning. So again, we'll kind of team up on this, not to put you on the spot, but do put you on the spot. I'll just say, and we do have some action items and some other things to go through, but just from an overall system performance, this month, again, slightly below our target, system-wide 87.5% unaudited, but we did exceed 90% on-time performance on our Fredericksburg line, which is the first time we've done that this year. And consistent with a theme of the project awards and stuff, again, biggest contributor there is just system congestion on the railroad. So, and then I too wanted to just shout out to Kate and your staff for the legislative forum. Very, very, as always, very well done, very professional, and just very, very glad to be part of that forum on an annual basis. So shout out to you and all your staff around the room here. And then finally, just wanted to for those that were able to get tickets, Santa Trains on Saturday. Look forward to seeing everybody out there. And again, not just as participants, but there's likely people in the room that will be in a volunteer capacity, if you will, in uniform, incognito, if you will. We just won't tell you which train you'll be on. So, but with that. That's my report.
Awesome, thank you, Rich. I want to say, I know you didn't hit your target, but my look at your record, it's definitely trended in the right direction.
Absolutely.
The on-time performance. So I just want to commend your team. I know it's not all under your control, but definitely appreciate that moving in the right direction. Any questions or comments for Rich? Santa, I'm guessing, I don't know. And then James, if you want to go ahead and present Mr. Walkinshaw, the VRE action.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Action 9B, the commission is being asked to approve resolution 2524 to approve the 2024 VRE legislative agenda and authorize the CEO to pursue the elements in the document. Was presented at last month's meeting here, and it's in the meeting materials. And, I'll just note, and much of it is consistent with NBTC's legislative agenda with a few unique VRE items.
Any questions? Could I have a motion to approve the legislative agenda?
Sure, I move approval of resolution 2524.
Second. Was that? Okay. Any further discussion? So with that, I'll start with my roll call. Those virtually, Mr. Aguirre,
Aye.
Mr. Snyder.
Aye.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? That happened. Mr. Walkinshaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Action item 9C, the commission asked to approve resolution 2525, which will accept VRE's FY23 annual comprehensive report and associated information from the auditors, authorize the VRE CEO to distribute the report. PB Mayors also conducted VRE's audit for FY 2023, and they've issued an unmodified opinion. The letter states that the VRE financial statements in all material respects fairly and accurately present the organization, which is the best outcome I can have in a financial audit.
Any questions? All right, Steve, would you like to make a motion?
Yep, I would move approval of resolution 2525.
Second? Second, any further questions or comments? Who was the second? Oh, Mr. Faust, that for the final second. Let me start online with Mr. Aguirre.
Trying to get to my mute button. Aye.
Mr. Snyder?
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion passes. Mr. Walkinshaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Action item 9D, the commission is being asked to approve resolution 2526, which will authorize the VRE CEO to submit on behalf of the commission VRE applications to the I-66 Commuter Choice FY 25 and 26 program, make any necessary corrections to the project amount or descriptions in the applications, and to execute all project funding agreements that may result from consideration of the applications. VRE staff identified a group of capital and operating improvements that support and implement land service enhancements that are authorized in the Transforming Rail in Virginia initiative. Consistent with VRE procedures for grant applications, the Operations Board must recommend the submission of grant applications to the Commission's further authorization. The Commission's authorization does not confer endorsement of any VRE application in relation to the adopted I-66 Commuter Choice project selection process. The identified projects in the resolution include service enhancements on the Manassas line, which is priority 1, a commuter choice application for a total amount of $4,766,000 for a 24-month period. Step up service restart on the Manassas line and fare buy down, priority 2, a commuter choice application for a total of $1 million for a 24-month period. And capital funding for the VRE Alexandria station improvements, priority 3. Commuter choice application for a total amount of $6,570,000.
Any questions or comments from commissioners?
I'll just note, as it noted already, these are all part of Transforming Rail in Virginia and connected to today's very exciting announcement of the launch project. So, that's right. Yeah, literally connected.
Could I have a motion to approve resolution number 2526 to authorize the VRE CEO to submit on behalf of the commission's VRE applications to the I-66 Commuter Choice FY 25 to 26 program?
So,
Second by Takis. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, hi, Dave Snyder. Now, is this inside the Beltway, I-66, or outside the Beltway?
It's a combination of revenue from both inside and outside.
You hear that? Mr. Snyder? It's
I
a
hear.
combination.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Excellent question. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, to that, let me go ahead and start our virtual roll call. Mr. Aguirre,
Aye.
Mr. Snyder.
Abstain.
For the rest of the commission, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes with one abstention. Excellent. Back to Mr. Walkinshaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last item, just an information item 7D, describing the VRE Operations Board new policy to conduct a 360-degree assessment of the Chief Executive Officer at least every 2 years. Talking about that later.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We do have a closed session at the end of tonight's presentation. Any further questions for Mr. Walkinshaw or the VRE staff? All right, thank you so much. Mr. Zelfin?
We're gonna stay in solidarity.
So if you don't mind.
Is that really solidarity that we're calling it?
We've been together all week, it feels like. It's a long week.
All right, I guess we'll let him stay.
Let him stay.
All right. We are so pleased to have the RPC Director Brule in person tonight to provide a report as well as sad moment for us. We're so happy for you, sad for us to hear that you announced your retirement schedule for later next year. We happily still have a few more months of you. I know we will all have plenty of time to celebrate you before you go. But on behalf of the entire commission, we want to thank you for your many, many years of service, and most recently as DRPT Director.
So thank you, Mr. Dalton, for the lead-in, because it's been a historic week for rail in Virginia. Not only did we have the announcement this morning of $729 million for transforming rail in Virginia package, but really the Long Bridge. The Virginia Passenger Rail Authority Board, which I get the privilege of chairing as a result of my position, had a really historic day yesterday that we awarded the first 2 contracts to actually deliver on the program. So we awarded a progressive design build contract for the Long Bridge North. That's basically from the landing of the bridge into the District of Columbia to L'Enfant. And then we also awarded a construction manager general contractor approach for the contract for the Franconia Springfield bypass project. So incredibly grateful for the partnership from NBTC. I know you guys went to bat for us to help us secure the federal money to close the funding gap that we've had in the program. So we are in a great place, and it's been a wild and wonderful week. So
So now you can retire.
I can retire. What can I do?
You announced several times, we'll see what happens next time.
So 5 more months to go. Not that I'm counting. But the other thing that I wanted to mention tonight is we have a couple of staffing changes I want to recognize. Tim Roseboom, who's back here typing away.
Yes,
Tim's been with the RPT for a number, almost 10 years. But most recently, he served as our senior program manager for WMATA and has done a fabulous job. He and his wife Amber relocated to Michigan earlier this year, so Tim's been working remotely for us, but be leaving the agency in the, we're holding on to them. End of the year, maybe we're still talking, but we have, we're very grateful to have brought Jen Monaco on, so we will, even though I'm leaving, we will maintain a Jen presence.
It's a requirement.
So we're back to 2 Jen, so, you know, it's double trouble for at least a few more months. But Jen came to us from the city of Alexandria, and she has jumped in with both feet, working on our Metro program and supporting a lot of activities that we have with the administration and working with our partners here in the region. So we are in a really good place. So just want to thank Tim for his service. Welcome, Jen, and still lots of good things to do here. So with that, you have my written report, but I can't talk the last couple of days.
Well, we'll give you that gift of an early night, hopefully.
Yes.
But Paul raised his hand, yes. Paul.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Tim, I just want to say thank you so much. And, you know, a lot of people may not know, but Tim is a real go-to source for a lot of things. And just always appreciated his just thoughtful, even explanation of everything. And just knowing the background and how things were or had developed or were drafted or something. It was just always so helpful. And just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
enjoyed working.
Yeah, I have
Really
too
appreciate it.
as well, Mr. Chairman. I mean, Paul has both of my phone numbers, so.
I'm a big stepper. Awesome, well, thank you. Excited, we still have a few more months with you, Jen. Thanks for bringing another Jen on board. And really very much appreciate the partnership and your support. Also, so to that, ending a very historic week, we will turn it over to our executive director for the report, but then we will have a closed session following her report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And indeed, we do have Kathy Hollinger right on the front of our executive director report. There's a fantastic spread in here from our legislative forum. We also do have highlights of a fun ribbon cutting we had in the city of Fairfax for their bike share. Fantastic bike share that's going to link folks all over the city and up to Vienna Metro, which I love that. And so I'm sure there's other things. We have our commission photo in here as well. One of the aha moments I had just as we were coming to this place was recognizing we look at the things that are on our agenda tonight. They had the quality products and the everything from our financial stuff to our WAA report, to legislative agenda, to legislative event, etc., had the fingerprints of almost all of the NBTC staff. This was a great example this month of sort of the wealth of things. We even talked a little bit about Route 7. There's again, commuter choice, etc. So it was really wonderful. I just have to do the personal thanks to the staff for really a phenomenal 2023. We have a lot more exciting things coming in 2024. And so just you wait on that. So indeed, starting with our January 4th commission meeting, which will be back in here, it's going to be our 60th anniversary of NBTC. And I know many of you have been involved in some of the background work that will be revealed later in the year. We do have a number of events that are going on to celebrate our 60th. So you hear a lot more about that at our January meeting. But indeed, we do have a year of celebration that we really are going to be launching in that January meeting. The other thing we do at our January meeting, as the chair mentioned, and this is really for the public, is that this is our annual public hearing on the breadth of work that we do here at NBTC. Obviously, we have public meetings related to commuter choice, and we have public comment at every single meeting, but this is the chance for the public to talk sort of holistically on the work that we're doing here at NBTC. And there's information up on our website. We'll be probably a big blast the next couple of weeks on information, because people can be here in person, they can leave a recording, a video, email, etc., a whole bunch of different ways to provide public comment. So we will have that hearing at our January meeting. So I just want to make sure folks knew about that. And further, as I mentioned, our Richmond meeting, our February meeting will be in Richmond on February 1st. And we will have a meet with our legislators. So I do look forward to seeing many of the commissioners at that. And we'll be back in person here in March. Finally, do remember to let me know in the next couple of weeks if you have any interest in changing your committee assignment or serving on the Virginia Transit Administration Board or any of those other things. We provide information to remind you where people sit. So we can have those slate of any changes ready for all of you to vote in January. WAA Committee, we've got the wonderful reminder we do both in January and February. WAA Committee, we do also have our Program Advisory Committee. We'll be meeting in February, aligned right before the WAA Committee. So of course, Ron did a fantastic job of giving folks heads up on that. But we're going to have some important committee meetings. As always, we do have our financial reports that Scott and the team put together. Those are in your materials, and that concludes my report.
Amazing. Before I turn it over, I'm so excited to see the red bikes in regional work. Was so excited to have Mayor Reed and her team come to our recent ribbon cutting for trails. the bikes, and we are looking both through local and federal funding to expand, our bike network. That really is a regional network. And for those of us who think e-bikes are a game changer, it is amazing, and really that last mile connected to our, rail and bus systems is amazing to expand across the region. So thank you to, our partners in the region for continuing the effort even in remotely. Yes, Mr. DeFranci.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and this was, you can get with my email newsletter, it's just not.
Yeah,
great,
right.
But
We
I
need
will,
your team.
but I did want to just make sure I said, one of the speakers today, who I don't, said that, Ken Rule has made a difference for generations, and I really think it's true. This is a huge day. And, I don't think it detracts from Kate's report for, to just say out loud, just a big thank you, because it's not usually the people who are making everything happen behind the scenes that get recognized verbally like you were this morning. And I happened to sit next to you, and I just want to, that's to say you make a difference for generations. I'm not sure that I can come close to saying that. So credit to you. And I may not agree with everything the governor said, but I sure agree. So.
Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they ride the train. Or drive by.
That's right.
And I do want to glossed over it, but Measure Now named Ethan Tidy.
And the NBTC team.
And the NBTC transit champion. So congratulations. To that, any questions or comments before we move into our closed session? So to that, we will be going into a closed session. And so I believe everyone should have received materials this week regarding performance reviews. So I hope you had a chance to review those. And I believe we have decided executive committee to go ahead and do the closed session. We do have Mr. Walkinshaw here. We will try to keep it brief. Hopefully everyone did their homework and read all of the materials. Trust you read all the materials that were handed to you, so that we can meet a brief discussion, and Mr. Walkinshaw and then Ms. Bagley is also there to provide us with some context as to how that worked today. So I believe we'll need the room,
Take a motion.
okay, so could I have a motion to go into closed session? Do I have it? I do have it, thank you. Pursuant to Virginia Freedom of Information Act, section 2.3-3711.J.1 of the Code of Virginia, I move that the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission convene a public meeting for discussion of personnel matters concerning the performance of the DRE chief executive officer, DRE council/chief legal. I heard a motion, second, any further discussion? Hearing none, I will start with the virtual, Mr. Aguirre. Mr. Snyder.
I'm waiting. Gotta wait for everyone to come back and just stay around.
Do I have a cleansing motion?
What motion?
No, you don't come out of closed session. Oh, oh, here it is. Sorry, everything's a little out of order.
File.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready and I'll do the cleansing motion.
I'm ready.
No, sorry.
I'm ready.
You're right.
You're always ready.
She's ready. Madam Chair, I think we could be back online for the general public, right?
Yes.
They're back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm waiting.
Yeah.
She gave you.
Yes, I got a thumbs up. Thank you. We're now back in open session. Welcome back to the public and staff listening via YouTube live streams. The Northern Virginia Transportation Commission certified that to the best of each member's knowledge, of no individual member dissenting at the just concluded closed session, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Freedom of Information Act were discussed, and two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened were heard, discussed, or considered. Any final discussion? Hearing done, let me begin with virtual, Mr. Aguirre.
Aye.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any objections? Great, wonderful. I will now turn it over to, Mr. Walkinshaw for his motions.
Madam Chair, I move that the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission approve the third amendment to the employment agreement for the EBI, and that the chair be authorized to execute it on behalf of the.
Let me start online, Mr. Aguirre.
I'm kidding.
Hey, I can't hear too good because there's a lot of people like talking next to the mics.
Pretty funny. Thank you. That was funny.
Yeah, okay, well, let's have silence in the room and Mr. Walkinshaw will speak loudly with his motion.
Okay, I move that the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission approve the third amendment to the employment agreement reached by the, and that the chair be authorized to execute it on behalf of the commission.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Franzi, any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Faust.
I just want, you have to say as discussed.
Well, in closed session, we discussed it, but the action doesn't have to say that, does it?
No, you have the amendment. The amendment will become public.
Yeah.
I know he's a lawyer, I'm not, okay. Mr. Aguirre,
Aye.
Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Wonderful, the motion passes. Second motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission approve the first amendment to the employment agreement with Steve McIsaac, and that the chair be authorized to execute it on behalf of the commission.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, going to virtual participants, Kenneth Aguirre,
Aye.
David Snyder.
Aye.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And the motion passes with a unanimous support. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Mr. Isaac and Mr. Dalton, we're so pleased to have you reconstituted, recontracted.
Resuscitated.
I'm about to do. All right, I believe that concludes our meeting. Without objection, I adjourn and we'll see you on January 4th. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.